case the Committee on Ways and Means will come to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Scott,
Present.
Commissioner Baker McCormick,
Here.
Commissioner Marecki,
Here.
Commissioner Bajun,
Here.
Commissioner Anderson,
Here.
Vice Chair Palomera,
Here.
Chair Varga. You have a quorum present.
Thank you. We're also joined by our chair, Alicia Bell. Next item.
Item B, Chairwoman's remarks.
I have none.
Next item, item C, approval of minutes from the April 7th, 2020 meeting.
So
moved.
moved. Doing.
Commissioner Scott.
It's been moved and supported. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Item E1, requesting commission approval of budget adjustment 2020-35027, certifying revenue and reallocating expenditures in the general fund.
Okay. We're gonna switch things up a little bit. I would like to leave the agenda items to the to last. I would like to have a presentation on the budget and what we have to look forward to. And if we would start off with Mark Abbo to set the table for us.
If I could ask the clerk if she has the PowerPoint presentation, I might want to put it up. And I believe this is going to be done by the administration. There's been a lot of work in the last several weeks regarding the impact of the virus on the finances of Wayne County, and this kind of summarizes some of the things that have been going on, not from that perspective, but a lot of perspectives regarding the virus. So I will turn it over to the administration and let them walk us through the PowerPoint that they presented.
Thanks, Mark. This is Khalil.
Thank you.
Do we have the presentation?
I'm sorry, I don't have the PowerPoint, Mark.
You know, it was sent to Pam and Mark. And I can try to.
It's probably me. I'm in my house, so I have bad reception. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Mark, do you have it? And can you send it to
Yeah, I do.
Octavia?
I'm forwarding it over to Octavia right now.
Thank you. Just one moment, please.
Yep. I think, you know, I could probably get us just started with a high level narrative, if that's okay with you, Madam Chair.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you all
Please
for having
proceed.
us. Yep. Khalil Hall, Assistant County Executive here. Also with us is Huey Newsom, and he is our CFO. And I want to thank you all for taking the time. Obviously, you know, the county's our administration, along with the county commission and this committee especially, have worked incredibly hard over the last 5 years to make sure we presented balanced budgets, and really all the good work that you all did and the staff here, you know, one of the best financial turnarounds in the country after what we were facing 5-6 years ago is really an amazing thing. We are obviously facing COVID-19, and that is going to affect our revenues. Whenever a public crisis occurs, it has a tendency to raise our expenses while at the same time dropping our revenues. And I got a note here. Kelly Rao, who is our budget director, is also with us. But Huey Newsom is still trying to log on to the system. I've gotten a couple of messages from some of my staff that say that. So I just want you all to be aware.
Thanks.
But we do have the presentation, and we can go ahead and get started. So we do know that our revenues are going to be affected. And on April 8th, the county executive sent a letter to, if you can go back up one slide, thanks. On April 8th, the county executive did send a letter to all the elected officials saying, we know that we worked really hard to have one of the best financial turnarounds in the country of any county in recent history. We know that COVID-19 is going to dramatically affect our revenues. If we kept the same level of service, we would have a massive deficit shortfall. So we will have to tighten our belts in order to try to get to a place where we present a balanced budget to the commission. And so, we are going to start a process in which we can present that plan to the commission. And part of that process is us coming here today to tell everyone what we expect that budget shortfall to be, what that revenue loss looks like. And then obviously talk about, some of the things that we're going to talk about at a high level to help us climb out of the hole, as well as whatever recovery efforts that we can make. You can go to the next slide.
50%.
So, Wayne County has been hit worse than other places when it comes to COVID-19. I think this is very, very important. As the executive orders come into place and our world starts to shut down and people are not participating in our commerce, Wayne County gets less revenue. We have over 40 different revenue streams, and in order for those revenue streams to continue at the levels we thought that they were going to be, people have to participate in our economy. So, where there are really bad hit places, by COVID-19, you're going to see worse shortfalls. You're going to see bigger hits into those revenues. And the state of Michigan is consistently in the top 3 or 5 places in the country, that's hit the hardest. Now, Wayne County has about 17.5% of the state's population, but we have about 45% of the cases and 46% of the deaths. And so if you're a resident of Wayne County, you are likely to know somebody affected by COVID-19. You're likely to know somebody who died from COVID-19 more than other residents of other places. And so because of that, you will tend to see our residents, take precautions and again, participate less in our economy, which ultimately will hit our revenue stream. Can you go to the next slide?
Is that on in the kitchen?
Thanks. Now, nonetheless, our administration has done a lot to combat COVID-19. We've deployed over $1 million worth of PPE to frontline workers. We've got a new testing site up in Sam's Club. I heard this morning there's going to be another testing site up in Dearborn, which is very, very welcome news. We've paid furlough for our county employees and hazard pay, and we've done that. We were one of the first to do that, and we're one of the only ones still left hanging on. So I think that's definitely a set of dedication to our employees. We've reduced populations at the jails and at the detention facilities. We've continued our Meals on Wheels program. As you all know, food distribution right now is definitely an important aspect of the service we have to provide. It's a very expensive program to operate at a time like this, but we know how important it is. We've also worked with Forgotten Harvest and Zaman International and other places to help food distribution occur. You all know about the TCF program of up to $14 million, and we gave an update at the last hearing about how well that's going. About 144 folks have been approved in Wayne County. Over $3 million have been obligated as within a month's time. We still got to get the word out because there's still more money to do. So we were awarded $1.6 million. It was the largest grant award in the state. It wasn't enough, but it was the largest for small businesses, which we administered. The Health Choice Board has announced reducing its premiums 20% for small businesses. And we moved the filing deadlines for business licenses, which was April 30th back to July. And then, just the news, last week, Vibra Hospital back online thanks to the approval of the county commission, awarding them $500,000 for upgrades in the facilities. With the welcome news of what we are hearing with Beaumont Hospital and other hospitals really around the country, this is a good thing. It's definitely going to help with the circumstances we're facing. Even though we are doing all these things, and even though we are seeing signs of the curve flattening, I think everybody's got to keep one thing in mind, and that is we are being told from the health department that we will not have a vaccine for 12 to 18 months. And so, as the curve flattens and as people, start to adhere to the slow to spread campaign and all those things, people will still get sick and people will still unfortunately pass. And our world will still have, we will not be in a normal state of mind until there is a vaccine. And I don't know that we'll ever get back to normal even after that. So, until we have a vaccine, we are going to continue to see some of our revenues get hit. Can you go to the next slide? So we wanted to give a decent sense of what the financial outlook of things are going on from nationally and locally. The fiscal crisis nationally, we had 22 million claims of unemployment in the last 4 weeks in the United States, and that was as of last week. We haven't looked at anything this week. The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, says that this could be one of the worst recessions since the Great Depression. And that includes what happened to us in 2009. St. Louis Fed sees unemployment that could possibly peak as high as 30% in 2020. To give you some relative comparison, in 2009, they said it was going to be at 10%, so they think that the situation is going to be worse. Goldman Sachs estimates a record of 24% drop in national GDP. And there are countless other economists who will tell you that, our economy is definitely in a recession, going to hit a recession, and nobody knows how long it could last. Can you go to the next slide? That's what's happening nationally, and here's a little bit about what's happening locally. Jobless claims are going to go up, and we try to sketch this out with the department at the state office of comparing ourselves to other places, even in the state of Michigan. We see Wayne County and Macomb County and Oakland County, really counties along some of the freeway corridors, I-23, I-94, I-96, and I-75. And the one thing that we are seeing is that our jobless claims are going to be higher, which means people will spend less, and it will lead to less revenues for us to be able to provide county services. Can you go to the next slide? And this is a little bit of a snapshot about what happened to us in 2009, 2008, 2007, when we hit some of the previous recessions. The county executive always says, even the day before the coronavirus hit us, the county was operating at $100 million less than we were in 2007. And in that time, expenses were higher, right? I mean, expenses get greater over time. We were operating with less revenue. We were still doing a great job with this commission providing residents better service than they had been receiving in the past. But if this gives us any indication, we know that the thing that we are facing now, if it's going to be the same or worse, is going to hit us dramatically financially. Can you go to the next slide? And so, we have been working really hard to come up with a new set of projections. What I would say is, anybody that comes up with projections are doing their best that they can to project. And so it is on some level an educated guess. We feel good about our projections, but they are, looking back on this, a year and a half from now, we will absolutely be wrong. Hopefully we're not too wrong, but everybody will be wrong. And in determining how those projections come about, we are in constant contact with other governments to make sure we're sort of adhering to other practices and philosophies of these projections. And that includes, the other counties near us, that includes the state of Michigan, And the Treasury Department, that includes the city of Detroit. And I think the state of Michigan had said recently, they expect somewhere between a $1 to $3.5 billion shortfall. The mayor gave a very thorough presentation a week ago or so, that over the next 16 months, they're going to see a shortfall of $348 million. And he's taking a lot of precautions, and including having to lay off some of his workers, scaling back some of his workers, making budgetary cuts, and taking the necessary precautions that they need to sort of make sure that they're running an efficient government. Our loss, it looks like our lost revenue for this fiscal year, based on our projections, is around $152 million. For those who are very familiar with our budget, we've got about a $1.67 billion budget. We are halfway through the budget year. Our budget year is different than the city of Detroit's, where they only have a few months left. We have, up until the end of September. And so when you calculate it, 152 million over the half of the year, it's almost 20%. And there's a lot of assumptions in here. I want to make sure, Huey Newsome is on here, because in the next two slides, can you go to the next slide?
I'm here, Khalil. I can take it. So again, like Khalil just mentioned to this body, we're projecting a $152 million shortfall just for the second half of fiscal year 20. That's primarily driven by.
I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. Would you identify yourself for the record?
I'm so sorry. I forgot. Huey Newsome, Chief Financial Officer for Wayne County.
Thank you.
Not a problem, Chairwoman.
Go ahead.
And so, like I was saying before, we're seeing that's primarily driven by two buckets that really concern us. We see the inability to collect property taxes for the remainder of the fiscal year. As many of you know, the lion's share of what comes in the general fund is in the summer general operating millage. And so that is going to, we expect that to be a significant hit, our inability to collect that money. And then the next bucket that you see, you already know that a lot of the organizations, pretty much every organization that relies on service charges, fees, permit fee revenue, et cetera, those organizations aren't collecting any money from the public. They're not performing any services for the public, so to speak. So because of that, we're seeing a significant drop. We're assuming virtually no activity over the last over this quarter, and then a slight uptick to 50% of what you would have seen this time last year in those organizations that collect those service charges, fees, permits for, say, restaurants, etc. The following buckets, we see a smaller impact only because those revenue streams are smaller in terms of their proportion of the overall revenue. The liquor tax, airport tax, other taxes, that come from, say, the TCF Center or the stadiums for ball games. Though we see, again, stunted activity in those areas as well. We see an $11 million reduction in the revenue that we were projected when we proposed the budget back last year for the fiscal 20. I do want to make sure something is clear before I go forward. We're looking at not just general fund when we look at this $152 million. We're looking at the entire budget, all of the funds, which add up to roughly $1.67 billion overall. There's a mix of revenues that obviously come into the county, into those individual funds. And it's very important to remember that if a fund is short, the general fund funding from the general fund is used to prop up that particular fund. Like, for instance, if juvenile justice and abuse and neglect fund is short, then the general fund might have to transfer money over to make that fund whole. So we can't just look at the general fund as by itself. We have to look at all the funds together. There's a lot of interconnectivity that goes on between those funds. Let me shoot ahead to federal, state, and other grants. We have been in contact, like Khalil said, we have been in contact with the state of Michigan, and we do expect to see a reduction of about $4.5 million from Act 51 funding. As you know, that funding is used to fund road construction, maintenance of bridges, et cetera. And so it's something that, that particular one we're taking a deep dive into in the next couple of days. One other thing I will point out, state shared revenue is built into that 11.3 and other taxes. We're seeing about $2 million of shortfall in what we projected or what was promised before at the beginning of this fiscal year. We don't yet have projections yet for fiscal 21, but as you see this, and look at the assumptions, you'll note that, and like Khalil was saying before, because of an economic downturn or the potential of an economic downturn, fiscal 21 is also going to have a lot of pressure. Fiscal 22 is going to have a lot of pressure.
Right.
Fiscal 20, in terms of property tax revenue, does not have, the correction of, say, taxable value. We won't see a taxable value adjustment in fiscal 20, but we will for the next fiscal year. Next slide, please.
I think on that point, just real briefly, while property tax value might not, that is absolutely true, right? The treasurer didn't foreclose on properties this year. Thus, we're not going to get the benefit of some of the things that we usually get financially from the auction. So I do want to make that point.
That is correct. And then on slide 10, you see the same thing pictorially, but not only do we have to worry about the $152 million shortfall that we're projecting in revenue, we also have to look at some of the expenses that we're carrying on because of COVID-19. We had to buy masks for frontline employees. There's no question we were going to do that. We had to provide hazard pay for those in public safety that are making us safe and keeping us protected. We had to do that. That's something we're going to do. We also lost so much productivity because so many employees who could not work remotely still got paid during the paid furlough. So that those things are also built into that 24 million. So if you take it collectively, you're looking at $176 million so far that we see for fiscal 20. So that's the revenue shortfall plus the expenditures. And of course, those expenditures, we're not done fighting COVID-19, right? We haven't even returned to work yet. So that 24 million could definitely climb as we make sure that we ensure the public health of our employees in the public. Next slide, please.
Great, thanks, Huey. And so, obviously, we're looking at a shortfall in a pretty dramatic way, as I mentioned, right? Whenever you have a pandemic, you have increased expenses that you didn't budget for. You've got lost revenue that you have to make up for. And so, on some level, we have to tighten our belts and make sure we bring to you all as close to a balanced budget as possible. How do we do that? How do we come up with this new budget and next year's budget and present it to this committee and eventually the full board? We have to have a set of principles. And right now, our number one priority is, anything that is necessary to fight COVID-19. The slower we can stop the spread, the more we can get healthier people back, online, the more people, the closer we get to, having a vaccine. We'll also have to have a good, strong, health department, emergency management department, and so on and so forth to distribute that vaccine, to administer that vaccine. The sooner and more efficiently and effectively we can do that, right, the safer our residents can be, and the faster we get online, the faster we can get back to, improving the overall economy, including our revenue. And so in figuring out a set of guided principles to drive us into that, we are looking at, number one, what is necessary to fight COVID-19. Number two, public safety, which will help, get us to fight COVID-19, because again, adhering to administrative orders and executive orders and all those things require public safety. And then any essential services under the charter that hopefully will, especially the ones that will support, 2 and 1. And so those are the guiding set of principles that we will use to hopefully bring you all a new budget for your approval. If you can go to the next slide. We wanted to just, as transparent as upfront as we can be about some of the ideas that we have, and giving it to you early as possible to talk about how we could climb out of this hole. And so while this is not an exhaustive list for sure, and while we are very much open to anybody who has any ideas, and we have received new ideas, and I think those ideas have been helpful, we definitely wanted to share with this body and all the commissioners some of the things that we're talking about. First, how do we make up $152 million by the end of this year? And first and foremost, we will have to dip into the surplus in the rainy day fund. And if it's not raining now, I don't know when it's raining, right? This is a once in a lifetime situation, and I think there's probably no more appropriate time to dip into the fund that this committee and the rest of the commissioners have worked so hard to build up over the years. So we will have to dip into that. Next, we are going to talk to the Treasurer's Office about sending as much money as possible from the delinquent tax revolving fund over to help support the general fund. And there's a lot of conversations right now. I do want to thank, Mark Abbo, who, has history with the county, knows this stuff backwards and frontwards, is providing us with a lot of support on this conversation. But, a lot of these other buckets and how we get to 152 million, could possibly depend on how much money we receive from the delinquent tax revolving fund. So it's just something that we're monitoring, and we've had some productive conversation with the Treasurer's Office about this. Next, non-capital expenditures. We are looking at all of our contracts right now, and we have been in contact with every county elected office, every director, and the commission about looking at what contracts are, necessary, what contracts are mission critical, what can be deferred, and what can be terminated. Again, we will use a set of principles in the last slide. What is, important to fight COVID-19, what is, things that will help support public safety and essential to the charter. But we are absolutely looking at, the things that we can terminate and things that we can scale back in terms of contracts. And then obviously, we've got Huey and the team looking at our pension and OPEB contributions. When we first took over, those things were funded, our pension was funded at 44%. And Huey can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know it's over 60% now. And we always had a goal of trying to get it funded 80% in 10 years. I know we are ahead of schedule, but the general fund needs so much support right now that maybe there's some numbers that we can look at when it comes to the pensions. Capital expenditures, we want to look at some capital expenses that we may defer, things like that, and possible renegotiating of some leases. I think there's probably some cost savings there. The procurement process, this is something that we plan on working on with the commission and the commission staff. Our procurement process is, one of the most encumbering processes of any county in the state. There are 83 counties. We think we have, I think the largest budget of 83 counties and one of the lowest thresholds. And so it's a conversation that, we want to have with the chair and the staff. And, so for this, we're proposing a sort of working group that can make recommendations ultimately to the commission, because any change to the procurement process will require commission approval. And so we hope to explore those opportunities with you. And then look at other regional, procurement opportunities, procure certain items for sure. And so the question is, can we overlap some of those items and drive down costs together? And so we're going to be looking at that. The recovery of this, a lot of conversation this morning about the CARES Act, and we heard Chuck Schumer this morning say that there's some possible good news along the way. I think it's very important to understand a few things. The pandemic has raised our expenses and lowered our revenues, and the current readings of the CARES Act, we've been told, says that there's probably some things that are recoverable, masks, PPE, things like that. Is hazard pay and paid furlough recoverable? There's some questions on that, right? Is lost revenue recoverable? As it stands right now, it is not. Obviously, we have been in constant contact, and I know that the chairwoman Alicia Bell has been in our daily calls and weekly calls with our local communities and our congressional delegation, which we stay in constant contact. We've been asking folks to fight, and they have been fighting vigorously for us to make sure that local municipalities are able to recover some of the lost revenues. And so depending on how this all shakes out and what some of the details get released today, I think we're hoping to see it go for a vote today in the Senate and maybe in the House tomorrow. And we're hoping that the details that they release say that there will be some effort to allow us to recover all of our expenses and revenue losses, because without it, it's going to be a very, very difficult situation for us. Obviously, if we are able to recover a lot of money, then a lot of this calculus changes. But we're always being cautiously optimistic. Last but not least, we got to look at personnel. And I think, if folks paid attention to the mayor of Detroit's presentation last week, I think this was, something that nobody wants to do. It's the worst thing you have to look at, but it's certainly something you have to look at. We are going to be implementing a hiring freeze, and so there'll be a hiring committee established to look at any requests to hire any additional employees. We are going to look at retirements and see if there's any cost savings there. But reduction in workforce is something we're going to have to look at. And we don't have any answers for what that looks like today. But we are certainly in conversations with our, we're even looking at ourselves. We're looking at all of our directors at the CEO's office. We are having conversations with unions. They started late last week. We have had conversations with elected officials and things like that. And so, we're looking to, climb out of the hole as painless as possible, but there's going to have to be some pain. And so, Madam Chair, with that, I will turn it back over to you. If anybody has any questions, we're happy to answer.
I do have a couple questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner
I'll
Head.
hold mine until the end. So Commissioner Hedges.
Thank you, Madam
Go
Chair. Khalil, you mentioned something really make me a little bit worried about the reduction of the workforce. And we know we have so many vital projects as a bridges, road, and we stretch very thin in that area. Is those areas going to be affected if you decide to reduce the workforce?
Any reduction anywhere is going to result in reduction in service, right? Whether that is
Right.
in contracts and services or workforce. And the truth is, all of that is dependent on so many factors. It's hard to say where that hit will take right now. This will depend on, how much we can recover from the CARES Act. It may depend on the number from the Treasurer's Office. It may depend on, so many other things. And so it's hard to say where that hit will take place. All we know is, we have a set of principles that is going to guide us. And those set of principles are going to be, number one, what do we need that's necessary to fight COVID-19? Number two, what are we going to do to support public safety? And then number three, what we can do to, support what's essential in the charter.
Well, let's hope the damage would be minimum to the vital services, because as you know, the county have so many issues and in some area in the services, and reduce the workforce, that's gonna really affect us and affect the life of the citizen in many different ways. So again, like I said, I'm very worried about the services we provide with this kind of economic difficulty, but we hope to work the commission leadership and the commissioners work with the administration to minimize the pain.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Palomero.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Do you have anything, Commissioner Palomero?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Madam
Go
Chair.
ahead.
Thank you. Khalil, I appreciate the sense of priorities, the identification of the specific revenue streams, and also the expenditures and how you wish to make this budget be balanced. I'm hoping as you get down to that very last item, reduction in workforce as a last resort, I would hope that there would be a sense of shared sacrifice rather than outright elimination of jobs, especially those that are crucial to providing the services that Commissioner Jesus talked about.
Yeah.
So when you're in those internal discussions, and I know none of these are easy matters to contemplate, but here's at least one commissioner's voice that I would appreciate a shared sacrifice rather than elimination outright of entire jobs. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Anderson?
Yes, I appreciate it. I would like to, first of all, I'd say I concur with Commissioner Palomero that shared sacrifice certainly should be a priority over going to laying off people if at all possible. And I'm sure the administration to be looking in that direction already, but I did want to add that I support that as well. And then, Khalil, when will we see a revision of the current year budget, a recommendation from the administration, and a breakdown specifically on what it includes?
Yeah. I think usually, we come to you all in June to do that, in hopes that we all get together and approve it in September. But I think in this situation, I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I was thinking about current year budget, not the new budget.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I can tell you that, Huey, do you have any idea of when we can go back? I mean, I think, we have to have some things definitely in place, and a lot of real strong conversations before April 30th. Right now we have folks on a paid furlough till April 30th. And so, I don't know exactly when we'll be able to come back to you, but we have an aim to have some answers questioned by April 30th. And, our commitment to you is, as we have updates and as we have answers to some of our outstanding questions, we'll be in front of you as soon as possible.
Yeah, if I may add to that, this is Huey Newsome, CFO. If I may add to that, so what you should expect to see the next, like Khalil mentioned, the next time we come to you, we'll have a more definition in terms of numbers around recovery. I'd say probably towards the end of May, and Kelly's going to keep me honest here, towards the end of May, beginning of June, you'll start to see a series of budget adjustments so that as we start to propose recovery plan, we're going to cut these contracts. We're going to adjust this in terms of bringing in additional grant revenue, recovery money, whatever. You'll see a series of budget adjustments probably starting towards the end of May. And, with the expectation that as we go forward, we'll be we'll be working our way towards a balanced budget that recognizes the reduction of revenue.
I appreciate that. I have one follow-up question, Khalil. Of the $3.3 million that we received from the feds, that basically, what we're trying to do is get the 80 additional beds at the one hospital, and that took away $500,000. When are we going to see the details of what the rest of that's going to be used for? And is it possible to use some of that money to offset the shortfall that we're anticipating?
Yeah, that's a great question. I hope in the next couple of weeks to have some plan in front of all the commissioners to spend the rest of those funds. In that, we are working with the health department, right? What is their sort of number one need? The purpose of the money is to spend the funds to help COVID-19. We are in constant communication with HUD to ask them, some of the outline details of the eligible uses. We know that it has to be used under HUD guidelines. So we know that for sure. We know that there are some expanded uses under the COVID-19 CARES Act, HUD only related for the $5 billion that was allocated total nationwide. And then there's guidance coming out sort of on a weekly basis from them. The hospital was certainly one of those things. And I think, given the thing about Beaumont, I think we all put forward a very, very smart thing. As far as the rest of the funds go, we are going to see does any of that have the ability to overlap with our additional expenses. But as I read some of the guidance on the CARES Act for the HUD funding, you have to spend the money to attack COVID-19. And so where there are opportunities, we're certainly going to look at those.
One of the things, if I could, Madam Chair, one of the things that I'd like to see us do, and I've been talking about this for weeks now, is trying to get some additional testing sites in Western Wayne County. Because right now, St. Mary's Hospital is the only one that I'm aware of that's doing tests in Western Wayne County. And when I'm speaking of Western Wayne County, I'm talking about west of Telegraph. But there's virtually nothing out this way. I've had questions constantly from people about testing sites and do they have to go to the fairgrounds, and it's just, I think for us to realistically have an assessment of where we stand is that increase in testing. And we need some testing in Western Wayne County, partnerships with some of the drugstores if that's possible. But maybe we can use part of that money that's left to help provide some additional testing sites.
Yeah.
Madam Chair,
To that point, Madam Chair.
We have a list. We have a list.
That's all I have at this
time. And I will make sure I'll get everybody on there. But I think I agree, or at least 3 commissioners and the executive would agree that we will do everything possible before the layoffs would be the last resort. I know the workforce are going to be very concerned about that. And Khalil, if you could talk real quickly about would there be a follow-up to extension to the furloughs?
Yeah, and I think we are looking very strongly at that right now. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, furloughs, are up until April 30th. I know there are folks, including the executive, who would like to explore extending the furlough. But I can tell you that you've got, other folks that truly believe financial difficulties are as bad as everybody says they are. That paid furloughs after April 30th are going to be a very, very difficult thing to do. And so as soon as we are off this meeting, our teams are meeting again to try to come up with a plan and get it to you all as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. Next on the list will be Chair Bell. Then I will put Commissioner Baydun, and who else did have their hands up? Meraki, and who else? We'll start with those in order. Chairwoman Bell.
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman. Just wanted to go back to the financial discussion really quick and just let everyone know that myself and Mark are in constant contact with the administration as we work through the recovery plan and how we're going to recover financially. So I just want you all to know that we are at the table with this. And of course, as was stated over and over again, we will have workforce reduction as the absolute last resort. I think there are many other things we can do to address our financial shortfall before getting to that point. But Mark and I and Chairwoman Ilona Varga are in constant contact with the administration on the budget and what it's going to look like for the rest of this year and into the 2021 budget season as well. So I just wanted to let everyone know that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Meraki, Baydun, and McCormick, in that order.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank everybody who's been working on this. I think I've said all along this whole pandemic that we need plans in place to look at the future. And as depressing as this all sounds, at least we're having a discussion on what's coming down the road. And I really appreciate all the time that's gone into this. Hopefully we get better news as time goes on, but I'm going to be looking forward to working on this Ways and Means Committee for this when you bring your suggestions forward. And again, I really appreciate the fact that you guys are looking to the future to see what's going to go on with the county. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Baydun?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the point of Commissioner Anderson about testing sites in Western Wayne County, someone mute if they're not speaking, because there's a lot of static in the background. Okay, anyway, so to the point of Commissioner Anderson, CVS has opened a COVID-19 testing site for the public in the city of Dearborn. It will be held at the Henry Ford Centennial Library parking lot, and CVS can perform up to 750 tests per day. Rapid COVID-19 testing will be available to eligible individuals who meet the criteria established by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. In addition, the state residency and age guidelines. They need to register on CVS.com. Anyone can drive to Dearborn and be tested.
Thank you. Commissioner McCormick?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question in reference to the jail and what this shortfall will mean to the continued building of the jail. And I don't know if you haven't really mentioned that. And so can you talk to that, or do you have any information?
Well, you know, the best that we can say is, you know, the jail contract and our development agreement has a force majeure clause that basically say if there's a, you know, a pandemic, an act of God, that the timelines get extended. And so this, I think, absolutely qualifies. There is an executive order that stops construction, and so you know, folks are not working on the site. We are trying to get guidance from the governor's office as frequent as we can to see when construction can start up again. And you know, to the extent that it affects the development agreement that we have, it will absolutely provide, you know, ROC more time to deliver the jail, because obviously the work, you know, the stoppage in work is certainly not their fault. It's not our fault. It's not anyone's fault. And so, you know, you'll see, you know, however many days we are in now. I've lost count. Feels like Groundhog's Day, but I've lost count how many days we're in this. And so you'll see that time get extended to the development agreement.
Madam Chair, to her question, Mr. Baker McCormick.
Okay, to that point.
I see James Heath on the call, and you know what I'd mentioned before. She may have missed it, but it was that we are at a standstill. Everything is suspended right now as far as construction, and you might want to add something to it. But I did want to actually go back to the point that Commissioner Baydun mentioned. I'm still hoping that we can get a site in Western Wayne County. It's a matter of transportation for some people, and Dearborn is still about 12, 14 miles away from most of the people, to 16 miles away from a lot of people that live in Western Wayne County. That's all.
Okay, Madam Chair, in reference to the jail, I know that we've halted the work of it. I wanted to really know about the financing end of it, and if because of the pandemic, would there be some financial liability to the county, and what that would look like? Have we looked at that? That's what I was asking.
Madam Chair, if I could chime in, James Heath Corporation Counsel, I think Khalil said it well. At this point, what we are obviously looking at is an extension of the schedule to some extent. We're still trying to figure out where we're going to fit in within that fall of ultimate timetable, and the force majeure clause in the development agreement requires that the developer and the county come together and discuss the ultimate schedule. To your specific question, though, as Khalil pointed out, we don't have a reason to believe right now, Commissioner McCormick, that there's going to be a cost issue with respect to the delay that we're experiencing. However, the force majeure clause doesn't mention at all that if there's a delay, the county has to kick in money for anything. That's just not a part of the agreement that we signed. The county came in with a specific amount that it was to contribute. We've done that. Any changes to that have been brought to this body. For instance, the central utility plant that this commission approved. So at this point, we don't have any reason to believe that our costs are going to be increased in any way. We're really looking at a time delay at this point, but we have not evolved to the point where I can give you a definitive idea of exactly how long that's going to be. And
Great. Well, I was really just looking at the cost. So if there's no cost ramifications, that's what I was asking. Thank you.
Okay, I think tomorrow in Health and Human Services, we're going to ask the health department if they're going to have any exclusive testing sites for employees, as well as Commissioner Anderson, your concerns about testing in your area. Next on the list is Commissioner Palomero and then Commissioner Hattis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry, but I'm going to request a temporary excuse for myself for the next little bit. I'm on the Michigan Association of Counties Board, and we're having our first board meeting since the coronavirus pandemic has set in. It's at 1 o'clock, and Governor Whitmer is participating on it with us. And I would just like to participate in that meeting, and as soon as it ends, I'll come back to this meeting. So requesting a temporary excuse.
You are temporarily excused for a very, very good cause. Thank you. Commissioner Hattis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I share the concern with my colleague, Commissioner Anderson, as a Western Wayne County not having enough testing ground. And I want it to be known for the record, when the need, it's great, and the demand, it's very important. Beaumont, a closed facility, and us, it's the only facility in Western Wayne County. And I hope the commission and the county would remember the disrespect Beaumont show to the Western Wayne County. And I appreciate the CEO, Warren Evans, involvement in it. And I don't think he have any clear answer from them yet on the reason and the what's the future hold on. And in such a difficult time where something is needed badly, they abandon us. And I really felt it's very important to put this voice on behalf of the people we represent, is when the difficult times show us we need a certain services, the provider just bail out. So I appreciate the time you give me for this issue again. And again, we talking about the budget. I know it's going to be ripple effect on everything. Joe, the Commissioner Palomero put it in a very good way, as we all gonna feel the reduction. We can take it from one area and create unbalanced situation. So I hope the commission and the leadership, we keep working together to make sure this county goes through this difficult time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to ask questions or discuss any of
Can
the
you
items?
hear me, Madam Chair?
Or Commissioner Martha G. Scott, you're on. Commissioner Martha G. Scott, are you on?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
You can hear me now? Okay.
I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Thank you. In regards to the jail, are those workers getting paid, or on the any kind of compensation for them while they're off?
Not from Wayne County. I don't know the exact. I don't know the exact situation that the various subcontractors and the like have with their employees, but the county's not paying them, man.
Okay, that's none of our. That's with the contractors then.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Heath. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Anyone else? If not, then we are going to conclude this part of the presentation and move on to our regular Ways and Means Committee agenda. Anyone else? Okay, then I will have the clerk come back and we are going to our regular Ways and Means agenda.
Item number E1, requesting commission approval of budget adjustment 2020-35027, certifying revenue and reallocating expenditures in the general fund.
Thank you. Any discussion on item 1?
Yes, Madam Chair, I had a question.
Go ahead, Commissioner McCormick.
Thank you. The position swap, can someone explain that, what that looks like, what that means?
Yeah, this is too small. Kelly Rao, Budget Director. What, I can't answer this directly, but I can tell you that they are just moving positions that allocate between the Buildings Fund as well as the Economic Development Division.
Okay.
I
I guess I would
Khalil
take
is,
go ahead. What'd you say?
if Khalil is still on, he may be able to provide more information.
Okay. And I take it
Says
he's
the
not.
revenue will be used for position swap and additional positions along with necessary computers and equipment for new staff members. I have not heard that we're hiring new staff members.
That is correct.
But it's not really, yeah, because we do have a hiring freeze on.
Okay. I guess I'll find out more about it later. I was just trying to understand if that's someone being promoted to a different position and moving, who's moving around. That's what I'm asking. But if you don't know, we'll get the answers later. Thank you.
I will get back with the chair.
We'll get you the the information before full board, so that way, as soon as I hear, I will forward that information over to you.
Great, thank you.
Do I hear approval? Do I hear
I'll move approval,
a motion
Mareki.
on item 1?
Support Baydun.
Anyone support?
Support
Any more
Baydun.
discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Item E2, requesting commission approval of budget adjustment 2020-35-110, certifying revenue in the Community and Economic Development Fund.
Any questions on this item? We will make, it says your internet connection is unstable. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We will definitely get some answers for full board, and I will explain these items as presented during Ways and Means meeting, or during the Ways and Means presentation to the full board. Anyone would like to move this item?
So
I will
moved,
make,
Scott.
I'll support Baydun.
It's been moved by Commissioner Martha Scott, supported by Commissioner Baydoun. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Madam Clerk, next item.
Item E3, requesting commission approval of budget adjustment 2020-35-129, certifying revenue in the COVID-19 fund.
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved and supported by
Baydoun Scott.
Commissioner Marecki.
I said Scott.
Okay, Baydoun Scott. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Item E4, requesting commissioner approval of budget adjustment 2020-35073, certifying revenue and reallocating expenditures in the county health fund and certifying revenue in the general fund.
Thank you. Commissioners, if you have your microphones muted, I can't hear you when you're voting, so that's why I asked several times. Any questions on this item?
Yes,
Commissioner Anderson.
thank you. I wanted to ask a quick question about that. My understanding is there's no expenditures set up for the county health fund. I think was one of the items that was mentioned by our fiscal staff person. I believe it was Mary. And I just wondered if someone could speak to that.
This is Kamal Keparu, Finance Management and Budget Finance Director for the Department of Health, Human and Veteran Services. I'll double check as far as the expenditures. Definitely, there's 811,000 was allocated across public health. There's multiple business units, so I can get back before full board with that detail. But definitely, it was allocated to different multiple business units.
I may have been speaking on number 4.
Oh.
Wasn't that the one that had the health fund?
Yes, 221.
Right. I'm sorry, Kamal.
Yes.
Oh, I'm quiet now.
Kamal.
If you have the answer, go ahead.
For which one again?
Item 4. It would be reallocating expenditures in the amount of $42,394 in the county health fund and certifying revenue in the amount of $20,202 in the general fund.
But I'm going to the agenda now because I just got the business units. Budget adjustment.
Okay.
1 second.
It went from health fund 221 to general fund 101.
If we could come
It
back
says
to that
it'll
one,
be
I need
used
to
for-
just find the detail for that one. If we can come back, I'm looking for it now.
Okay. It says it's for health fund for personnel, fringes, and pension. I don't know if it's an adjustment to what you needed. Kelly's getting additional information too. We'll come back to item 4. Next item, Madam Chair, or Madam Clerk.
Item E5, requesting Commissioner approval of budget adjustment 2020-35-126, certifying revenue in the COVID-19 fund.
Any discussion on item 5? It's been moved by Commissioner Baydoun, supported by Martha G. Scott. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Motion carries. Madam Clerk, next item.
Item E6, requesting Commission approval of budget adjustment 2020-35-127, certifying revenue in the general fund.
Thank you. Any discussion?
So moved, Scott.
Support.
Commissioner Scott moves, supported by Commissioner Anderson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. I have a question before we go on from someone. Commissioner Baydoun, do you know what the criteria is for the testing in Dearborn? I'm going to take this prerogative, chair's prerogative, to get that question answered.
There, as far as I know, there's no criteria. Any Michigan resident could be tested. They just have to sign up online.
Okay,
they don't have to be residents from Dearborn specifically. Anybody from the state of Michigan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm trying to make sure that we all get our information out. Madam Clerk, we are on item 7.
Yes. Item E7, requesting.
Okay.
Item E7, requesting Commission approval of budget adjustment 2020-35-106, reallocating expenditures in the county health fund.
Thank you. Any questions?
I'll move approval, Marecki.
Support, Baydoun.
Commissioner Marek. It's been moved and supported. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Item E8, requesting Commission approval of budget adjustment 2020-35-109, reallocating expenditures in the county health fund.
Thank you. Self-explanatory. Any discussion?
Move approval, Marecki.
Support, Monique.
It's been moved and supported. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Next item.
Item E9, discussion by the Economic Development Department and the Department of
We
Management.
did that.
We did that, yeah.
Just making sure.
We did that one. Next item.
Item F, such other matters as may properly be submitted before the committee.
Chairwoman, I have
Okay,
the answer. This is
committee members, do you have any? Oh, we
Chairwoman.
need to go back to item 4. We did not vote on item 4.
Well,
He's
yes.
ready.
Go ahead.
I'm ready. Yeah, that's what I was speaking to. That 20,000, that's the smaller detail. What it is we got an extra 811,000 from public health. So as you know, when we get funds from public health, funds we wasn't expected, we had to reshift monies around because we got more grant money than we expected. So by doing that, we had to take general fund and move it around in certain areas. So basically, we're just moving money around so that grant money we got, if we had general fund in certain areas, we took that general fund and just reallocated to areas that needed general fund. But the major part about this is that we got more general fund, which overall reduced our general fund overall to some of the budgets in public health. Did that make sense?
Great. We also, yes, that does. Any questions by members on item 4?
I'll move approval.
Commissioner.
Now supported, Scott.
It's been moved and supported. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. I have an answer from Kelly. Kelly on the previous item. Go ahead.
Kelly Rao, Budget Director. What it is the real estate person moved from buildings into economic development after the business development manager left. So there is the swap.
Who was the, I'm sorry,
The person that went into EDD was Wafa Dinero.
and who left? I'm sorry.
Melanie, I don't have the last name. She was the business development manager that left.
Thank you, Kelly, for getting that information so quickly.
You
are. Melanie
We are
Markowitz.
now on.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are now under such other matters. Commissioners, do you have anything under such other matters? Is the treasurer still with us? Okay, we'll bring them back to another meeting. I did speak to Treasurer Eric Sabri about the amount of dollars that he would be able to transfer and his concerns about potential lawsuits. And so I think it's worth for us to have that discussion in Ways and Means as we are going to need every penny that we can get from wherever we can. We will be talking about what we can do, Commissioner Meraki, with the executive. We're going to be in constant touch, Chairwoman Bell and myself, to see what the next steps are, and we're going to keep you abreast. And I had committed to us meeting every week if we have to, in order for us to have our input as to how we're going to go forward with the planning for the future. So that means for reopening, for everything else, we are going to be very involved with the executive. And when I have any information, I will call a meeting for Ways and Means so we can be all fully fully informed and have some input I would like to see myself, all of the vacant positions added up to see, first of all, what that would bring, how much savings that would bring. So we are asking questions and we are getting answers, but you will be informed. Like I said, if we have to meet every week, we will, or whenever we need to. Anyone else? Commissioner Anderson, did you? Okay.
I'm all set.
No one else? Okay, thank you. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Item G, public comments.
Anyone from the public wishing to comment? Ask questions? Anyone from the public wishing to comment? I hear none. Next item.
So moved.
Item H, adjournment.
So moved.
Commissioner Martha G. Scott moves, supported
Support.
by Commissioner Lorecki. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. See you very soon. Tomorrow
Bye-bye.
is public safety and HHS, Health
What
and
time?
Human Services.
What time are we?
So
What
I'll
at
probably
what time
see
are
you
the
there.
meetings tomorrow?
11 o'clock. 11 o'clock for public safety and 1 o'clock for HHS.
Thank you.
Madam Chairwoman, do you have anything else to talk to us about before we sign off?
No, I just want to thank everyone for joining the 2 calls today. A lot of information, and know that we'll be at the table to make sure that this is as painless as possible. Thank you all very much for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the hard work.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.